having us.
Thank you for being here and for being so flexible about
Yeah,
it.
we're excited. We were looking forward to go to take the train, and then like all the freaking trains are still canceled.
Yeah, we were hopeful, but
we were even gonna try to go to Linz today, but no such luck.
yeah, she went and bought
I bought
a
tickets, and then
yeah.
like 15 minutes later, I get an email saying it was canceled. So I'm like, couldn't you have told me that before I paid like, 40 euros for that or whatever? Yeah. Okay.
You can keep it for next time, maybe.
Oh, yeah, that's right. That's right.
All right. Well, welcome to Dude, Where's My Error? How OpenTelemetry records errors and why does it like that? And for audience questions, I mean, I think we can be flexible if there's we can like make it more interactive instead of like us just like talking at you. So
raise your hand
yeah.
if you have a question. Use the hand raisey thing. That's probably easier so that we don't miss you by accident. Or like if someone is keeping an eye on that, just say, hey, question.
Yeah. All right.
Cool. All right, my name is Adriana Villela, and I'm a CNCF ambassador, HashiCorp ambassador, blogger, podcaster. I do have a day job. I'm a senior staff developer advocate in the observability space. And specifically, I work on OpenTelemetry with my pal Reese. We're both maintainers of the OTel end user SIG. And by night, I like to climb rocks. I actually checked out a local gym here in Vienna yesterday, which was really awesome. And I also love capybaras because they make me happy and they show up on my Instagram feed all the time.
She's always talking about capybaras, you guys. I don't know.
Keep sending them to her.
My name is Reese. I am a senior DevRel engineer at New Relic. Like Adriana said, we work together in the OpenTelemetry community as part of the end user SIG. Our focus is around creating enablement content for end users and connecting end users and project maintainers to help facilitate a feedback loop to help improve the project. So if you know anyone or if you are interested in contributing, we would love that so much. And I used to like climbing rocks, but I started jujitsu a few months ago and I am all about that now. So
don't piss her off.
Well, anyway, so credit for this talk goes to Austin Parker. They are the community manager for the OpenTelemetry community. I'm sure not all of you are familiar with them. So they had written a Today I Learned type style post on LinkedIn earlier this year, I think, or late last year, about a conversation that I had with someone around how OpenTelemetry records errors. And it was pretty interesting. We've linked it at the end of our slide deck, so you can check it out as well. But it got us wondering,
dude, where's my error?
Where's your error, dude? But seriously. So how does OpenTelemetry handle errors? What options do you have for recording errors when you instrument a service with OpenTelemetry? That's what we're going to try and answer for you here today. We'll start with some quick backgrounds. I'm not entirely certain of everyone's familiarity with OpenTelemetry here. So if you have any questions, definitely feel free to ask. And I'm sure Juliana is happy to step in as well. And then we'll talk about error handling OpenTelemetry. And we'll also do a little demo for you to kind of show how the same error instrumented by OpenTelemetry is expressed in a few different backends. And why that matters. And finally, we will do a wrap up.
Okay, so first things first, before we get into things, let's do a little bit of background. So interesting thing about error handling in different languages is that they seem to do it differently. So there's no real concept of exceptions in Go, whereas languages like Java and Python have really well-defined ways for catching and throwing exceptions. So what happens when you have an app that's made up of multiple microservices written in different languages, and you need to have a standardized way of emitting telemetry, and you need a standardized way to report your errors? And fortunately, if you're wondering if there is a way to do that, we have OpenTelemetry at our disposal that can help us out. In case you're not familiar with OpenTelemetry, we'll just do a super quick definition. So OpenTelemetry or OTel is an open source project of the CNCF, and it is a vendor-neutral observability framework for instrumenting, generating, collecting, and exporting telemetry data. So that means that, vendors can just focus on rendering the data. They're all receiving the same data, and that's really what differentiates one from the other, which is awesome. So now back to errors versus exceptions, and what exactly is the difference? So everyone's got an opinion, of course, and so do we. But we've landed on some definitions that we're going to share with you, just for to set it up as a framework for the session, so we're all speaking the same language. We want to note that this is not the official OTel language around errors and exceptions. However, it's not going to break the universe. This is a more general industry definition. So an error is an unexpected issue in a program that hinders its execution. So it can be something like, you've got syntax errors like a missing semicolon, or perhaps a mistyped keyword. Or you've got a runtime error resulting from logic errors, for example. And then you have exceptions. And an exception is a type of runtime error that disrupts the normal flow of a program. So think of something like dividing by 0, or referencing an invalid memory address, or perhaps, you're unable to connect to your database. Those are exceptions.
Okay, so now that we have our definition sorted out, let's dive into error handling in OpenTelemetry. So as Adriana mentioned just a few minutes ago, languages have their own ideas about what constitutes errors and exceptions and how they should be handled. So how exactly does OpenTelemetry deal with all the conceptual differences from language to language? So this is where the OpenTelemetry specification, or spec for short, comes into play. The spec provides a blueprint for developers working across various parts of the project. What it does is it standardizes implementation across all languages. And since language APIs and SDKs are implementations of the spec, there are general rules against implementing anything that isn't covered in the spec. But so that's to help provide a guiding principle for organizing contributions to the project. But in practice, there are a few exceptions. So for example, a language might prototype a new feature as part of adding it to the spec, but the feature might be published usually as like alpha or experimental before the corresponding language is added. Another example is when a language might decide to diverge from the spec. So it's generally not advised to do so, but sometimes there are strong language-specific reasons for doing something different. And in this way, the spec allows for a degree of flexibility for each language to implement features as natural to that language as possible. So for example, most languages have implemented record exception, while Go, since as Adriana mentioned, it doesn't have the conventional concept of exceptions. It instead has record error, which does the same thing. And we'll talk about this a little bit more soon. Okay, so now that we have a unified framework, let's explore the options that OpenTelemetry instrumentation provides for handling errors.
Reese, just one thing. Andre asked if you could make it voice screen. I don't know if you already are, and maybe it is a smaller.
Oh.
Ah, cool.
Is that better?
Oh, hit Command F. It should make it.
But then I think that would hide.
No, then you can Command tilde.
Oh, but then that's going to be weird because then we can't see.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
Mm-hmm. No, but I think that's way better.
Is it okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Oh, sorry. Thank you. I didn't even think about. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Cool. Okay. Good. Okay. This is, I think, as big as it's going to get. Okay. There we go. Okay. So now we can talk about handling errors in OpenTelemetry. So you can report errors using spans or logs. And we're going to start with spans. So in OpenTelemetry, spans represent individual units of work within a request. So for example, an HTTP request or a database call, and spans are the building blocks of distributed traces. Oh, that was a little fast. So spans are related to each other and to a trace through something called context. And context is the glue that turns a pack of data into a unified trace. Context propagation is the mechanism that allows us to pass information across multiple apps and systems and tie them together in a distributed trace. It's also how we can get metrics and logs associated with our spans, but that's a topic for another talk. We can learn all sorts of things about our apps and systems through traces and trace context, such as how a user might be navigating your website, where bottlenecks might be occurring, for example. And okay, we're going to talk about spans for a little bit longer. So we're going to start with some of the ways OpenTelemetry enhances spans. So one of these is through metadata in the form of key value pairs or attributes, which is also the context that we were just talking about. So some attributes are collected by default, such as span and trace ID. And that's what helps tie, for example, correlate your logs to your traces. But you can also add your own custom attributes. And when you attach information that's relevant to like your business needs, whatever it may be, such as like user requests, user IDs, or request parameters, it allows you to gain deeper insights into the circumstances surrounding something that might have happened in your system. Or it can just, give you more information based on like what your business needs are. Spans also have a span kind field, and this helps to inform developers about where that span was generated. Span kind is determined automatically by the instrumentation libraries that are used, and OpenTelemetry defines several span kinds, and each of them has unique implications for error reporting, and we will go into them. So this client spans represent outgoing synchronous remote calls. So for example, outgoing HTTP requests or database call. You have server spans that represent incoming synchronous remote calls. Internal spans represent operations that don't cross process boundaries. And then the final two, so far at least, are producer and consumer spans, which typically represent message queue jobs. Another way that OpenTelemetry enhances spans is with span status. You can also add a description of the about the status. So for example, a message about if it's an error, what that error might have been. By default, a span status is marked as unset unless otherwise specified. You can also mark a span status as error if it's supposed to be an error, or okay if it's an okay span. And finally, we can enhance spans with span events. A span event is a structured log message that's embedded within the span on which it occurred. And the way span events help enhance spans is by providing descriptive information, and you can also use it to capture additional information by adding custom attributes to your span event. Okay, so when a span status is set to error, a span event is created that captures the span's error message in stack trace. So earlier we mentioned a method called record exception. Since Go doesn't support the conventional notion of exceptions, it has record error, which does the same thing idiomatically. You do have to make an additional call to set the span status to error if that's what it should be, because it won't automatically be set to that. So similarly, record exception can be used to record span events without setting the span status to error, which means you can use it to record any additional data about a span. And the decoupling that OpenTelemetry provides for us by separating a span status from being automatically set to error when a span exception occurs, it supports the use case where you can have an exception event with a status of okay or unset. And this actually gives instrumentation authors as well as end users the highest degree of flexibility. So you can also use logs to capture errors. In OpenTelemetry, a log is a structured message emitted by a service or other component, and typically include a message, a timestamp, as well as a severity level. Or yeah, I guess it's now severity text or something. Anyways,
Same thing.
so there's, you're probably familiar with these: debug, info, warning, error, and critical. Okay, so as I mentioned earlier, there's something called trace context propagation that allows you to correlate your logs to your span data within a trace. So if you spot a log level with something that has like error critical, you can navigate to the correlated trace using the associated trace ID to find out more information about what happened during that request. And if your backend supports it, you can also navigate the other way, so to the associated log from the trace. And to record an error on a log, you need to include either exception.type or exception.message. And it's recommended to also attach exception.stacktrace. Okay, so should you record errors on spans or logs? The answer, of course, is it depends. It depends like what works for your team. And every team has their own opinion, it seems, about what signals they need or don't need. So spans can be great for capturing errors because if the operation errors out, marking a span as an error could make it easier to spot. On the other hand, if you're not filtering OTel sampling and your system is producing thousands of spans per minute, you could miss errors that are occurring intermittently, but that still need to be addressed. Something else to consider is your backend that you're using. Does it render both logs and traces? Is it like traces only? How easily queryable are your log span events? And is logs and trace correlation supported? I think generally the answer nowadays is yes, but just another thing to consider. Also, if you have been using a proprietary agent to monitor your applications and have migrated to OpenTelemetry or in the process of migrating to OpenTelemetry, you might notice that an error that's captured by OpenTelemetry instrumentation might not be expressed the same way that you have been used to how your proprietary agent, the same error captured by the proprietary APM agent. So this is most likely due to the fact that OpenTelemetry models errors differently than how vendors have been. For example, vendors have their own notion of what constitutes a request. If you're in the observability space or have been, you're probably familiar with the term transaction, which means something slightly different from vendor to vendor. In OpenTelemetry, this is represented by a trace, which is made up of spans. So backends have also had to adjust how they populate their platform features with a fairly different data model. And also span kind might impact whether a specific span or span error is counted toward your overall application error rate. So for example, some backends might have an opinion that only server and consumer spans that have errors should be counted, whereas like, for example, internal spans won't count toward the application error rate. So it's kind of interesting, I think, and we'll actually show you some of the differences in just a few minutes. Adriana's going to run a demo and show you how the same error that's captured by OpenTelemetry instrumentation is rendered in a few different backends, starting with Jaeger. And she'll show you that Jaeger expresses span events as logs because that's essentially what they are, but some backends might have created a new signal type for a span event, which would impact how you query them and how they might be visualized in your backend.
Cool. Oh, before I continue, your battery.
Oh my goodness. Okay, I'm gonna go.
Reese's gonna get a cord just in time for me to do my part. Okay, so we've got all the theory taken care of. Now let's do a demo. I've written, well, I've taken, I guess it's an existing Python app that we're going to demo. It's made up of a client and a server. The client basically makes a call to the server. It calls this roll dice API endpoint. And this endpoint is written in Flask. And basically all it does is it rolls a virtual die and outputs a number between 1 and 6 to standard out. Now, in addition, the application has been instrumented using OpenTelemetry. So I've done some auto instrumentation with of traces and also manual instrumentation of traces. Also for fun, I've added in some logs and a metrics instrument, just so that, you know, we can see what a full-fledged example with all 3 signals looks like. Now, we are sending this telemetry to 3 different observability backends via the OTel collector. And that's one of the cool things about the collector is that you can basically configure multiple backends and it'll send the same data to multiple backends at the same time. So especially if you are trying to figure out which observability vendor to go with, this is a great opportunity to basically do a vendor bake-off where you can see how different UIs handle the exact same data, which is very awesome. It's one of the things I love about OTel. Okay, so here is our sample app. I'm going to be focusing on server.py because the client app, really, there isn't anything super interesting. All the cool stuff happens here. So first of all, we have our roll dice function, and it actually calls do roll, and do roll is the one that does actually the work. It will basically generate a random number between 1 and 6. And then we have the application initialization section here, which initializes Flask, OTel traces, and OTel metrics. Now, within do roll, we are creating a span. And within the span, we are capturing some interesting information. So first of all, we want to capture the roll value. So I'm setting an attribute called roll.value here. And in addition, for fun, creating a span event. So we include a message, but for funsies, we are also including a couple of attributes in our span event. And then, as I mentioned, we are doing some logging here. Now in Python, we're taking advantage of the Python auto instrumentation and the logs bridge API. And because we have embedded our log message within this span, it gets automatically correlated to the trace, to the parent trace, and also to the span. This log message has that automatic correlation, which is awesome. And then we have our counter instrument. So this is our metrics instrument. And basically all we're doing is incrementing this value by 1 every time the do roll function is called. Now this is a talk about errors. So we want to basically force an error. And in order to do that, I've set it up so that every time the die rolls a value that is divisible by 2, it'll throw an exception. And then the roll dice endpoint will catch, roll dice function will catch that exception. And as part of catching the exception, we are creating a new span in there, and also setting it as an error. So then we'll be able to capture the basically the stack trace for this error. And we are also creating a new log message here, and we're setting the log level to error. So for the UIs that support log messages, we can see what kind of what that ends up looking like. And again, because that log message is embedded within the span definition, it gets automatically correlated to the parent trace and also to the span. So that is the overview of our code. Now I'm going to do a little demo for you. I am not a glutton for punishment, so I'm not doing a live demo for you. I know some people really like them. Reese apparently likes them.
It's thrilling. It's thrilling.
Too much excitement for me. I'd rather go on a roller coaster for that kind of excitement. So what I'm going to do the next best thing. I'm going to do live narration of the demo. So the sample code for this is available on GitHub. So if you want to try it out, you can. And I set it up so that you can run it in GitHub code spaces so that you're not screaming at us saying, why the hell doesn't this stupid thing work? So hopefully it should like set up a nice little environment for you where you can run this stuff in GitHub code spaces. And I did try this last week. It still runs. So yay, unless GitHub does something weird. But yeah, the demo still runs. So here we go. Dun, 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 dun. So first things first, we're going to open this up in GitHub code spaces and it'll start up the code space. And then once things are started up, I'm going to add a new file called OTel config.extras.yaml, and that contains additional configurations for observability backends. And I have git ignored this file because it's got some API keys that we need to connect to the backends, and I don't want to store those in Git, so it's git ignored. So I added it in manually. So next thing I'm doing is I am building the Docker files for the Python client and server, and we're using Docker Compose for all this. So we'll let the little hamsters inside code spaces build the Docker files, do its thing. I don't have the Jeopardy music to go along with this. Okay, so we're ready. So we can run Docker Compose up. So it'll start our Python client, server, OTel collector, and Jaeger. And we see here in the logs that OTel collector, we see some OTel collector logs. It's good news. It's getting our telemetry. We're next going to open Jaeger by going to the ports tab and clicking on the little globe icon. So once we do that, it opens up Jaeger. And then we are going to look at some traces in Jaeger. So we'll go to PyOTel server. And you see some big red dots and some green dots. The big red dots mean we have traces that have spans with errors in them, and the green ones means traces don't have any errors in the spans. So this is the non-error one. Our do role span, we see our span event, which in Jaeger is showing up as a log, and so we see our message and our two attribute values. Now, if we open up one of our error traces, we see that do role has an error, which means that the value of the die roll was divisible by 2. So we see our span event, but also now we see a new span event, which contains a stack trace for our exception. And because it raised an exception, it also created that additional span that we created when we caught the exception in our Python code. So we go ahead and open that. And again, it shows, now we see a span event that shows the stack trace. So next we're going to open this up in another observability backend. And as you can see, we've got some red triangles and some green dots. So the red triangles basically represent traces with spans that have errors. The green dots represent traces that have spans with no errors. If we click on one of these green dots, we see again, do role shows up nice. We have our span event with our message and our attributes, but this backend supports logs, unlike Jaeger. So if we click on the view one log event, we should be able to see our log message in a second.
Actually, Jaeger called the span event a log.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Yeah, what she said. Jaeger calls span event a log, but they don't have a log like this. So here we see our log message and the corresponding trace ID. Now we're clicking on one of the red triangles and we should see our error span do role divisible by 2. We see again our span event, the one that we created plus the one that has the exception message. And again, we should see our log message. So there it is. Again, you see a bunch of logs that have the same trace ID. One of them is from the client and then 2 are from the server. So one of them was this. The other one is going to be in our other span that was created when we caught that exception. So again, we see that exception captured there in the span event. It shows our stack trace. And again, remember that we created that one log message. And if we click on here, remember that the log level was set to error. And so in this UI, it shows up in red. So we know we have an error log. And again, we have the same trace ID. And look, there's even like a nice little red dot there next to the trace ID. I almost got it perfectly synced
You did. I actually thought you like stopped
Yes.
it.
No, automatically stopped.
Okay, sorry, 1 second because I forgot to do something. Hang on, we will be right back. Forgot to move the video.
That was Adriana's fault.
Okay, I think this should be fine. Let me just double check. Okay. Okay, it
Oh,
looks a
cool.
little bit weird, but that's fine. Okay.
Oh, don't forget the speaker
Oh
notes.
shit. Yeah. Oh God, I should have such. Okay. Thank you for your patience. We are coming back right now. Okay. Okay.
Ta-da.
Okay, I know I was just boasting about how I like the thrill of a live demo, but I also have a recording this time just because I already have it, so we're just gonna go with that. Next time, I promise you'll
Oh,
catch me with the
geez.
live demo one time. So this is just to show you another backend example. So here we're gonna click into an error trace group, and once these load, we'll be able to see, oh, hey, some of these traces have errors. In this case, you can toggle. So let's go ahead and select one of these traces that has an error. And what opens up is you'll see a little service map of the service that are connected. Up here, you can see, oh, hey, there's a span with an error. Let's go ahead and click into it. And then from here, you can see the status code description, error is set to true. And hey, look, we collected a span event exception. And then this is just an example of like how some of the metadata is visualized in this backend for this trace. Well, sorry, for this specific do role span. So you can kind of see some of the different things and other details that are captured. And if we go back here, we are going to click onto span events. And because, as Adriana said, we actually have two span events, one that we just captured if something occurs, and then the exception, which is only captured when an exception occurs. So yeah, this is just to give you an example of how this might look. And as you can see, it's called specifically span event in this backend. This particular backend has created like the specific data type I was telling you about. So you actually would query span events specifically. So here you see the associated logs with the trace, and you can just kind of see, this is just a JSON formatted log with the information that we manually set to capture. And you can see that that came from OTel server. So we're going to head and click into OTel server service any second now. And here you can see just a dump of all the logs that we've gotten from this service from OTel server. And we're going to go ahead and click into the one. And as you can see, it's pretty much the same thing. I didn't go to the specific trace that we were looking at just now. So these are just random logs. Well, not random, but a set of logs from the same service. And yeah, we can navigate to the trace and basically go back to the same view from here. And it just depends on what your workflow works for you. Sorry, what workflow works for you. And yeah, so that was kind of interesting because
they're all like similar but different, right? Like
yeah,
it's cool. Like they're all getting the same information. It's just a matter of like how they render it. And then, some vendors will like do some additional stuff, like provide you with some additional insights that you may or may not find useful. And that's why you can use that to sort of evaluate who you like best.
Yeah, and there you have it. Error handling is challenging, but OpenTelemetry provides hopefully what sounds like a lot of options for you to record errors, including an open standard for instrumentation across all languages. well, okay, not every single language, but whatever language is available for OTel today.
Popular ones mostly, right? Like,
Yes.
I would say.
And yeah, so you can record errors through spans or logs. You can correlate both of them together as well, along with your metrics. And I just realized I didn't show metrics in mine specifically, but
Oh, I didn't really show them mine, to be honest, but that's okay.
okay, you guys are gonna edit this, right? So yeah, so there's several ways OpenTelemetry instrumentation lets you enhance spans, including through custom attributes, recording span events with whatever information is useful to you, and data visualization in your backend. We mentioned, this could make a difference for you based on like how you might want to record things. If your preferred backend, does something that's different than what you like. God, I hope that made sense. I don't know why it came out like that. Yeah, and the why that kind of matters too is OpenTelemetry is focused on instrumentation part, and so it doesn't provide a data storage backend. It doesn't provide
Visualization.
yeah, so charts, alerting,
Dashboards.
dashboards. Yes, thank
That's
you.
the word. I knew that was the word you were like trying to think of. Like,
Don't worry.
That's what I'm here for.
Yeah, so that's kind of why data visualization matters. But the cool thing, of course, is you can instrument your services once with OpenTelemetry and now send it to just about any major backends. And I think there's like always new ones coming up too. So yeah, hopefully you learned something that was useful to you or could be useful to somebody that you know.
Yes. And also before we wrap up, we want to mention that, Reese and I are not artists, but we are great prompt engineers. So credit to our evil AI overlord, Bing AI powered by DALL-E 3. May you spare us, Skynet, because we used your wares. We had lots of fun creating the AI images, honestly. Like, we're like, which one do we pick? Yeah.
The funniest is when they have like typos in them.
I know, yeah, that wasn't us. That was the AI. Also going to do some shameless self-promotion. I have a podcast called Geeking Out. I've had some really cool guests on. Also, the logo is designed by my 16-year-old daughter. And it has a capybara because she knows I love them. I've had some cool guests like Kelsey Hightower, Charity Majors, Liz Fong Jones, Hazel Weekly, and Reese. Reese was actually my second guest. She's awesome. As you can tell. So check it out. And also we promised you some references that you can check out. So a link to our repo on GitHub, a link to the post that inspired this talk. We also have a blog version of this talk on the OTel blog, and also a link to that OTel spec compliance matrix that Reese showed you all earlier. So there you go. Thank you so much for having us. This was a blast. We're sad that we couldn't come in person, but we are so happy that you invited us to come present virtually.
I know. Thank you so much. Silent applause. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Reese and Adriana. That was great. I have to confess, it's the second time I'm seeing this talk, but yeah,
Was
I love it.
better? Were you
No, live was better. Sorry.
Oh, fair enough. Fair enough.
Oh, that's actually that's good.
Yeah, it means we're great live. I mean, if you love us now.
I would just open for the audience. If no one has any questions, I do have one. So, okay, I'll just shoot mine, and then if someone is typing or anything, then we can take the second one. Adriana, in your when you were explaining the code,
Yeah.
you created a span to record exception. Any reason you do that? Like wouldn't you just take the active span and record? Is this a best practice, or you wanted to isolate that, or that service wasn't instrumented at all and you created the span to record?
Oh, you mean like when I created that new exception when I caught the, sorry, when I created the new span when I caught the exception?
Yes, exactly.
Oh yeah, I just did that for fun, to be honest. Like I
Okay.
kind of wanted to explore how like the error handling worked and to just illustrate some stuff and be like, hey, look, you can create a new span if you catch an exception. But by no means is it necessarily a best practice.
Makes sense. Cool. Awesome. Thank you.
Good question.
I see one from Andre about, does auto instrumentation record exceptions?
Good
So,
question.
that's a great question. To be honest, I don't know. off the top of my head.
I believe so.
I think it would.
I've honestly really only used manual implementation for the most part myself.
Because I was going to say, like, even in the manual instrumentation, like when it threw that exception and it set the span type, the span kind to error, like that wasn't me. It automatically set the span kind to error. So it leads me to believe that if the same thing happened in auto instrument, it leads me to believe that the same thing would happen in auto instrumentation. That as soon as it like there's an exception incurred inside the span, it would change the span type, the span kind to error.
Okay, never mind.
I think to answer Daniel's question, I think in this call we have 4 different answers.
Oh God.
So he's asking, what is your favorite backend, and what do you think about Signos? So another thing that I love about OTel is that in this call today we have 4 different vendors, and we are all working together towards better future for the project, and this is awesome. I don't have any takes on Signos. I never used. I don't know about Reese and Adriana.
I mean, so the question's about like your favorite. Oh yeah, favorite backend vendor. Honestly, the favorite backend vendor should be the one that does what you need it to do. And that is a very personal decision because it, like some people might rave about one backend and then they'll try, someone will try that and they'll be like, no, that's not for me. So it's personal. And I haven't tried Signos. I know it's open source. That's the extent of what I know about Signos.
Yeah, I'm pretty limited, to be honest, with my own experience.
Cool. Yeah, I think I just wanted to say thanks to Reese and Adriana again for presenting to us and being flexible. We really wanted to have you here in Linz, but yeah, I was really looking forward to this one.
Oh, me too.
I was like, yeah.
I know.
Is anyone here going to be at KubeCon North America? Because we'll be speaking at Observability Day with a brand new talk.
No.
Not this time.
No, so sad.
But maybe we can meet in KubeCon EU next year. So
fingers crossed.
Plans for this one already.
Till end of November, so
exactly.
Submit their CFPs.
Yeah,
Awesome.
I'm not super excited about going to London. Oh my God, look at me. I'm so arrogant, assuming I'm gonna
cosmopolitan, Reese.
No, assuming I'm gonna like get to go. Jeez. Never mind.
I've only been to London twice and I've barely seen London, so I would love to actually see London properly.
It's okay.
Every time I go, like I don't get to see it, and it's like always for work, and like one time I was in the suburbs for work.
I don't know. Heathrow just sucks as an airport.
Yeah. Well, Well, at least hopefully we can meet. So
Yes. That's
Yes. Let's end on a
yeah.
positive note.
yes.
You,
That would
you
be
can
why I would
you can
love.
always
Yeah.
fly to France and then take the train,
Oh,
but
yeah,
I
that's
don't
true.
think that would be a nice trip. But yeah.
Yeah. And you know, if we go to KubeCon EU, we can do another edition of Humans of OTel and interview more awesome people working on OTel and working with OTel. So
There's a train from Paris to London.
yeah, through the channel, the Eurostar. It's cool.
Yeah, it goes underwater. Yeah.
It does.
Shut the front door.
Yeah, for realsies, dude. It's cool. The first time I went to London was taking the Eurostar from Paris.
How long is it?
It's a few hours, right? Let's take a
And
look.
never taken. I don't know.
It's a few hours for sure. Yeah, it's cool. It's a little terrifying when you're under like underground.
Yeah,
Like,
no, it's yeah.
your things imploding. Yeah.
Cool. So to everyone that joined, thanks for joining. We will meet next month at Dynatrace, the same venue that we would meet this month. Georg's talks is already confirmed, and we are already checking second speaker. So as always, we do 2 speakers. And yeah, I don't have anything else to say. Jürgen, Kati?
Thanks everyone for joining, and thanks to this really cool and fun presentation. Thanks Reese, and thanks Adriana for joining virtually. But we know, like ideally we would have had you live in Linz. Maybe next time. Georg was already saying like yeah, you have to come back.
All right.
And if you're in Vienna,
I'm
it's
super
just a
down for
couple-
that. I love Austria. So
Twist my arm.
yeah, for real.
And the train from Vienna to Linz is not underground, so you can just
There you go.
no worries on that. Very easy train ride.
Like
So hopefully next time.
yeah,
So
hopefully.
thanks so much for joining, and I will reach out via LinkedIn just to give you the URL of our repo where you can, if possible, where you can submit the slides. That would be really cool.
Sounds good. And also we're on CNCF Slack if you need to reach
Ah,
us.
yeah, that's even easier.
Another good way to reach us. But LinkedIn works as
Perfect.
well.
I
Thank you so
will
much.
stop the recording.